For those of you that have been with us before, you might notice the absence of my partner in Empowering Chocopreneurs, Mrs. 𝗠𝗨𝗏. She isn't able to join us today. We might get lucky and she might be able to pop in, but due to unforeseen circumstances, she's not with us today. So I will be hosting on behalf of CocoaTown. And on behalf of CocoaTown, we'd like to welcome everyone to our Empowering Chocopreneurs webinar series. And welcome Dustin, our guest today, who's going to tell us his chocopreneur journey, his story in his own words, and hopefully inspire and encourage some of you on your journey. So first thing we'd like to do is, normally we'll do the CocoaTown introduction first, but what I normally do the housekeeping, so I'm going to go ahead and do that first. What I'd like to do is let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So if you don't have to take any notes, you can just take it all in and be present and hear the presentation, and you will get a link to view the recording later. As the presentation is going on, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. You'll find the chat button at the bottom of the Zoom panel, and you can put your questions in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, Dustin will answer our questions and we'll open up for a little bit of dialogue. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is what Mrs. Balu usually does, which is the introduction to CocoaTown. So give me just a moment, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so a brief introduction about CocoaTown. For anyone that hasn't been with us before, we'll go ahead and give you a brief introduction to CocoaTown. And for those that have been with us before, thank you for joining us again. So CocoaTown has a parent company, and that is 𝗖𝗵_concepts, which is founded in 1992. And 𝗖𝗵_concepts started by trading innovative specialty food machines. Their primary focus was South Indian cooking equipment. They realized that the machines that they were selling could be used for other gourmet foods. And when the recession hit in 2017, they decided to pivot and to broaden their focus. And that gave birth to CocoaTown. They wanted to focus on an industry where they could make a positive social impact. And they learned from some of the 𝗖𝗵_concepts customers, when they would come and buy equipment and they didn't have an Indian name, they would reach out to those folks and find out what were they doing. And they found out that they were doing things other than the South Indian traditional recipes. They were making chocolate, they were making facial masks with seaweed and other things. And that led them to chocolate. And they learned in 2006 that because of the way the industry was, there were only a few chocolate makers out there doing small batch bean-to-bar chocolate because they didn't have the right equipment. They could only buy large scale equipment. And that's when CocoaTown figured out that they could supply those types of machines. At CocoaTown, they have a very important multi-pronged approach to their thoughts and about sustainability. And what we focus on is sustainability in three key areas: the environment, business, and agriculture. So environmental, we provide machines that if the machine breaks down, you don't have to get rid of it and buy another machine and add to the landfill. You can buy parts and keep that machine going for the life of the process until you're ready to scale up, and even keep that machine after you scale up for testing purposes. So we try to make equipment that's going to live with you for the life of your company. And then sustainability of the business. We want to put people in business and help keep them in business. So we provide things like these Empowering Chocopreneurs webinars. We provide, when it's not during COVID times, bean-to-bar workshops to teach people how to do the process. And then agricultural sustainability. We want to help cocoa farmers to create a living wage for themselves and support their agriculture. So the objectives of 2009, when CocoaTown was first born, was to enable chocopreneurs with equipment and the resources they need. We also wanted to help cocoa farmers produce flavor beans for specialty industry, so they could use our equipment to make chocolate and taste the final product and know how to perfect their post-harvest processes and things that affect flavor, so that they could bring a higher price for their beans. And then also evaluation tools. And we wanted to really help make cocoa a superfood and take it from that sort of junk food or candy into chocolate as it was meant to be. And as you see on the screen, we have the CocoaTown through the years. It's a little timeline of the CocoaTown journey. And along that journey, we have patented our machines. And in 2020, we had to pivot again, and we started our Empowering Chocopreneurs webinar series, where we could bring industry experts and fellow chocolate makers like Dustin right into your living room or into your business, where you could hear their stories, you could learn from others around the world, and we could still connect even though we're not able to meet face to face. So our objectives now are empowering chocopreneurs, cocoa farmers through education, equipment, and evaluation tools. We've also been working on something that we're really proud of, which is our 𝗬𝗵𝘁, and that we will tell you all more about really, really soon. And we have been working on it for many years, packaging all of the equipment into a package that you can make your chocolate from roasting to the final step of grinding, and then providing all the accessories that you'll need along the way. So what does the future hold for all of us in CocoaTown? We have a prayer to return to normal life, to meet with friends, meet with family face to face. But in doing that, we also want to continue with the virtual connections, but then also get back to our in-person connections. And Mrs. Balu always ends with a saying in her language, which is "Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu," which means may all beings everywhere in the universe be happy and free, and may the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute in some way to the happiness and to that freedom for all. And I wish that for all of you. And with that, normally she would turn it over to me, and I would ask Dustin a question. So let me stop sharing my screen and I will do that. Okay, Dustin, so normally I would ask, how did your passion for chocolate begin? But I don't want to give away, your story. I'm gonna let you tell that in a moment. But what I'd like to ask you is, if you could give one, it's one of my favorite questions, if there's one thing that you wish you knew when you started this business, if you could share that with the attendees, just one thing you wish you knew that when you started that you know now, that you could share with them.
I mean, there's probably a lot of things that I wish I knew, but I didn't realize the passion I would have for this. So I wish I would have known what I was getting myself into, because it just keeps growing. I just want to continue to do more, and I don't feel like I was very prepared for that. So it's been a trial by fire, but you know, it's exciting too. So.
Thank you. All right, Dustin, with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you.
Okay, thank you. So hello, my name is Dustin Cornett. I'm from 𝗬𝗿𝗄ville, Kentucky. It's a really small town in Appalachia. Get my screen up here for you while I'm talking. Well, I needed to go back to the beginning of it, sorry. We were preparing and I didn't go all the way back, so my fault there. Anyway, so basically I would like to tell you my story today. There's some parts of my story that will be helpful, and then some parts are a bit miraculous that probably you can't imitate. It's just what happens in life, I guess, sometimes, and it's the journey, right? So, but my intentions are to be able to give you information that I learned, on my way. Sometimes it's not just chocolate, but it's getting to where we want to be. So with that said, I'll just start going through the whole timeline of it. So like I mentioned, I'm from this small town. I was born and raised in the small town, and then I ended up moving to Japan. I lived in Japan for about 6 years, and that's where I met my wife. We decided that it'd be better to move back to the States, so we decided to land my hometown at first. And she's from a very big city in Japan, Osaka, like the second biggest city in Japan. So I had no idea that she would fall in love with our little town here in the middle of nowhere. So I was planning to go to the West Coast or somewhere with maybe a Japanese company we could work for. But she fell in love with 𝗬𝗿𝗄𝗋. She loved the nature, she loved the people, and that changed my perspective a little bit on it as well. Growing up here, I had a different vision of this area, but after traveling and going to places like Palau, where it's just such a beautiful island, but everybody on the island talks about wanting to go somewhere else, but it appeared to be heaven for me. So I thought maybe that was a perspective issue. So coming back as an adult, I viewed my hometown quite a bit differently. And then when my wife fell in love with it, it made me want to try to do something here. So that is why we are in a town of 1,000 people trying to do 𝗵𝗵𝗄𝗃 chocolate. So at first we didn't know that we were going to do chocolate. We were trying to figure out what we wanted to do and what we could do here. It's very limited. During that time of transition, we discovered my grandma's chocolate recipes. Like she used to make bonbons, like buttercreams and vanilla creams, things like that she would give away for Christmas. She did that. I remember I was in elementary school, maybe the last time that I remember her doing that. And I don't actually remember the taste of the chocolate, but I remember my mom hiding the box of chocolate from my dad. And it was such a vivid memory that those chocolates just must have been amazing for her to go to the extreme that she did to keep them from my dad. So I really wanted to try to make her recipes, but I had zero experience. I went to school for broadcast journalism, and my wife didn't go to culinary school either. She works at a daycare, so completely different industries. But we wanted to do it, and we had the recipes, so we set out to do it. Just her recipes were very vague because she knew how to make candy. So she just needed basically the ingredients and she knew what to do. However, I didn't. So it was error after error on the slab of marble, just not coming together. And at the time, my grandma was still living, but she was suffering from dementia. So I would give her a phone call every now and then, and she would tell me a story. I would ask her questions point blank about, what am I doing wrong? But she couldn't answer that. But she would get in these moments where she would tell stories, and part of the stories, something would just come in there and slip out. Like, we'd butter the marble and we'd do this, and I'm like, oh, I need to butter the marble. I need to do this. So, she would go through all these stories, and I would be able to pick apart pieces of what I needed to do to make her candies. So finally, we were able to do this. And we're making candies right now. We're not making chocolate. We're just making candies. So we made these candies, and they were amazing. Like to us, like Godiva quality, like boxed chocolates. So we thought we want to do something with these. Grandma, she would call up 𝗪𝗪's back in the day and ask them to send her a 10-pound bar of chocolate. We just can't do that now. I mean, 𝗪𝗪's was a different machine then than it is now, even if we wanted to. So we thought, what can we do to bring something to her recipes, to her candies? Because this is something we had a passion to do. So we were trying to think, we didn't know, but we wanted to see how well other people liked these candies. So my small town has a festival in October. It's called the Woolly Worm Festival, where they celebrate woolly worms. Woolly worms are these worms that are brown and black, and they predict the winter weather. And they race these worms, and it's quite an interesting little town festival. A lot of people come home, and it attracts a lot of people. So we thought, hey, let's try to sell these candies at this festival and see if anybody likes them. We didn't have a commercial kitchen. We didn't have really anything other than grandma's old marble slabs that she gave us. So we rented a kitchen. I think we were supposed to rent it just from maybe 8 in the morning to like 5 in the evening, but they went home and they left us there. So we stayed 24 hours right before they got back the next day in the morning. We stayed 24 hours in this kitchen making candy. We made some hard candy as well as the other candies, and we just made as much as we could. It was intense. So we got ready for this festival, and we're like, we need to name our company something. We were just doing this. We weren't thinking like business minded. We just had a passion. We were excited. So we named it Purple Lady Confections. Purple Lady was to honor my mother, who passed away over a decade ago, because she loved purple. Everything she did wore everything purple. So we named it Purple Lady Confections. And it was her mother that made the candies, and her name was Rosemary. So we put roses in the logo for her. Everything for us kind of needs meaning. Like I said, we're not really business minded. We're thinking with passion and everything. So the family, it meant something to us. So we needed to keep that. So we named it Purple Lady Confections, and we set up a nice display, and we sold these candies, and we were thrilled. It was amazing. It was great. So we wanted to move forward with it. So like I said, we wanted to do something ourselves though. And at that time we had been able to have more experience with chocolate and with candies. So I decided I want to make my own chocolate. I want to take this chocolate to complement my grandmother's recipes. And that was quite an endeavor. It was really difficult. This was in 2014. So got online, I Googled everything I could. I found chocolate alchemy, and I studied what John Nancy was saying about these, the small machines, the grinders, and go from there. So we started from using nibs. We didn't start from beans and roast and all that. We started from the nibs just to see what we could do. So we started doing that, and one thing kind of led to another. We were just trying to figure out how to survive, and at that time, we were actually living at a Bible camp. We didn't have a home, so we were trying to figure out a lot of things in life after moving back to America. And we realized that being in what CNN labeled as one of the poorest towns in America, it's going to be really hard to sell gourmet craft chocolate. So we needed to take further steps. My wife had developed a passion for baking when she got to America, and she got really good at baking. So we thought maybe we could add baking to it as more of like a pastry shop or sweets, and then chocolate be part of it. So we kind of went that direction with the chocolates, and we were able to find a location that was fairly sizable, and we didn't need all of that space. So we worked with others. I created a co-op. And so I made the chocolate, then my wife did the baked goods, and then we brought in somebody to do coffee. And then there was a tattoo artist in the same building, and then it ended up a newspaper company and a few other different things from here and there. And we operated like a co-op. We shared the bills and just, survived in a small town doing a lot of different things. And that was kind of how we got started. And it was a better way to start here because people knew about baked goods. And when our customers would come, then we could talk to them a little bit more about chocolates. And then our chocolates were more seasonal, and it was more box chocolates. We were still following the direction of grandma's recipes. So we taught ourselves how to do everything, but we had to think outside the box to be able to continue doing it. So, we bake it till we make it. We got really popular with our baked goods, and we weren't using our chocolate in our baked goods either, for price points and things like that. But that helped us get a name for ourselves. But all through this timeline, we're still at this Bible camp. We don't have a home. We're trying to figure out what to do with our life, because we want to stay in this small town, and we have the passion to do chocolate. And out of nowhere, this old motel comes on the market. We don't really have anything. And the motel comes with a house, which was really appealing to us since we didn't have a home. And we went to banks and we asked about trying to get a loan, and over and over again, we would be denied. And it kind of makes perfect sense, because we were kind of homeless and asking for money, and we didn't have a big plan of how we could pay them back. So we had to really come up with a good idea, a good business plan, things we weren't familiar with doing, and then just say, hey, we're in this small town. I've came back to the small town. So I grew up here, came back. I want to bring something back. I want to bring something I've learned. I want to help this town grow. And if people don't come back and do that, then the town is not going to grow. And you have to take a chance on us, because you're taking a chance on the town, essentially. So that worked. I had no idea if that would work, but it worked. So they gave us a loan. So we bought the motel, and then, all right, so we have a lot of work ahead of us, because we got this old motel that was built in the 60s that's completely run down. Hey, but we have a home, we have a house. So we're starting to get a little bit more stable in our journey. We're educating people about chocolate this whole time. My wife's baked goods are taking off. And so we're still doing that at the co-op. But when this comes into play, things have to change a little bit more. And then also at that time, I had just a regular job. I was making like $10 an hour. So I would basically, after we got the motel and everything, I would start my day talking to contractors about what they need to do, and go to we're at the co-op and help my wife get started baking and stuff for the day. I would go to my hourly job that ended around 5. I then go back down to our little cafe and close that up. Then go back to the house next to the motel and go through all the rooms, make sure they're all locked down, make sure we're making progress on everything. While I have to talk with like local ordinance, like the state, about our plans for building and renovating, and then all the health department and plumbing division and electrical inspectors, all this at the same time. It was kind of crazy. So sadly, chocolate kind of had to be put on the back burner. It was the thing that was making the least. It was our passion, but it just had to, we had to pause that a little bit. We still did seasonal. We made sure every year we did something, but it just couldn't be the main focus, because we had to make sure we were going to be here. So the plan came to remodel this, and it was about 2.5 years later. So we started working on it in, we bought it in 2015, and we started working on it. And then in 2017 of that September, we were able to open. And that's when the Chocolat and Cafe was born. I mentioned the 𝗪𝗿 confections is the connection to my family. We wanted to still keep that connection in a way, but we didn't know how to connect purple with the lodging and everything. So we connected what we did at 𝗪𝗿 confections with the lodging. So we took the chocolate part. So that's why we named it what we did. And then we just made it fancy by dropping the E, doing the French chocolate. So Chocolat. And we added the cafe to our inn. So we had to leave the co-op. We had to leave the co-op before our inn and cafe was ready, just because of we had to focus on everything to make sure we were able to get it done. But we still wanted to do things that we had done at the co-op because the locals have appreciated it. So we added the cafe on. And then we had to start doing our own coffee. So that was a different step for us. Through this time, we had been able to purchase like a small roaster to roast the cacao. So we could use that to roast the coffee. So we're like, we'll just buy green coffee and we'll have a really great fresh coffee. We were, like I said before, it's not a business-minded thing. It's a passion. It's we want to offer the best we can. We know we're small. It's going to take us a long time to go through 150 pounds of coffee that we roast ourselves. But that's what we wanted to do. So I started roasting coffee and learning about that. And it was really interesting because coffee 10 to 15 years ago is going through what craft chocolate is now. If you went somewhere 10 to 15 years in a small town and someone trying to sell you a $5 cup of coffee, they're going to look at you kind of like people look at me now trying to sell them a $10 bar of chocolate. So being able to see that correlation was really interesting. So moving forward, I watched people a lot. I watched what they were into and kind of what they would buy, like what they felt their dollar was, worth. So to get kind of back to what the Inn and Cafe is, though, after it was completely remodeled, it's 8 rooms. After the 2.5 years it took us to remodel, we had 6 of the rooms done in the cafe. It took us another 1.5 years or so to finish off the last 2 rooms. Plus we have a back patio and then the workshop for the chocolate and for the coffee, but mostly for the chocolate. So it was around 2019 when we got all of that done. And I'd kind of been putting off having a child because it's kind of a lot of work to do all this stuff that we're doing. So whenever it was completed, my wife and I, we decided to have a child, and she was born in February of 2020. And then after that, the pandemic hit. So we really haven't been able to do a whole lot since being completely renovated and ready to go, because we had the pregnancy and then the child and then the pandemic, and we're still battling the pandemic. So certain things we haven't been able to do, but what we have been able to do is, like I said, we do the roasted coffee. So we do all the coffee drinks. We went as far with that as we could, with the frappes and everything imaginable there. And my wife does the pastries, huge pastry case in there where she does the cream horns and danishes and things like that. People will travel over an hour just to come to the cafe to get her baked goods. And then the bean to bar chocolate. We started doing more chocolate bars, not just bonbons. So we got into that. We have a display case for that now too. So throughout all of this, we've been growing little by little, kind of at our own pace. And we're still here. So that's great, right? But we're looking for that big word, right? Sustainability. So how do we do that? And how do we do that the way we want? So we started with chocolate. That was the passion. That's what I want to do. And I think my wife wants to do it too. But that's where it all started. And then we had to go down so many other paths, but we did find things that we enjoyed about those paths. I mean, the lodging, we love meeting people from all over, and then being able to share our experiences, that's great. And then the cafe, we have a lot of our locals that come, and we see them every day we're open. They can watch my daughter grow right in front of them, so while they get their coffee. So that's really interesting too. And we like being the workers. We like that experience. So we don't want to just be the owners and have other people do that. We want to make the chocolate. We want to kind of make the drink and have that little small chat with you in the morning as you're going to work. So we want to do that. That's great. But long term, how can we make it sustainable? And what do we need to do so we can do more with chocolate as, you know, the main passion there. So we logically have to bring it all together. So we have the lodging, and with the lodging, it just makes sense to add the experiences. We weren't able to do all that because of how it timed out with the child and the pandemic. So and actually another odd thing is our county, or the town that we're in, they weren't able to sell alcohol until 2020. It was still a dry area since Prohibition, but just recently it passed and we are now able to sell alcohol. So it makes sense for us to do chocolate and wine pairings, chocolate tasting, since we make bars of different origins. We can sit down and just discuss that while they're staying at the inn. So some evening, it just kind of goes together. We can do dinners and things as well, and sipping chocolates. Really, that I feel, not only for us, but for the industry, we're kind of in the phase where it's all about educating people about what we do and why we do it and why it's important and why it's good. Having that ability to have a place where you can get people together and to have a fun experience, that's where it's at, I think. And what's really crazy is when we first had the passion to make chocolate, we had no idea about that. And just somehow our path took us there. And that's where we are now. And we have to put it all together. And sadly, where we're at, we don't know many other chocolate makers to be able to talk about, you know, what they've been able to do and their experiences. I'm thinking Kentucky, there's 2 of us. I think there's another one in Cincinnati, which is not too far. And then just, there's not a whole lot right here for us to network with and kind of help each other out. So it's good to be invited to these type of webinars. And I really thank CocoaTown for this opportunity to be able to share our story and let people know who we are and what we want to do. Because I think there's a lot of us out there in the same situation. And if you're in a small town like we are, it's going to seem really daunting. But it's just, if you want to do it, you got to, you know, find a way to do it. We've been really lucky that things have just fallen into place how they have, but there's things we've learned on our way. And one of those is take what you can with it. I never thought I would do anything with coffee. I didn't drink coffee until I was living in Japan teaching English as a second language and needed to buy a drink at a coffee shop when I'm doing these private lessons, but I didn't want to pay $2 for a Coca-Cola that size. So I got some iced coffee, and I guess I kind of got a little addicted to it because I love iced coffee now. But being the chocolate took me to coffee is odd. And I'm roasting my own coffee. We do our own cold brew, and recently we started our own nitro. And these are things that I had zero interest in before, but they help other parts of my business. And it lets me make chocolate. And it's nothing that I feel like I have to sacrifice too much to take me away from chocolate, but that can possibly complement it. And the same thing with the lodging and the pastries, and being able to use some of our chocolate in the cakes that my wife makes and things like that is also fantastic too. It can really tie together. So I'm not sure if I was all that helpful with my story. I hope you have some questions. Maybe I can go in further detail with certain things, but where we started and where we are and how it works and where we're continuing to grow and go, I think is quite interesting. And to say that we're seriously, my town is 1,000 people, and around me is a called something, it's like the Red River Gorge. I'm not sure if anybody knows what that is, or Natural Bridge State Park. It's a bit touristy and it's growing some, but it's not huge. So we're battling against a lot of obstacles here is what I'm trying to basically say, that it's possible. If you want to do this, you can do it. just use everything you can around you to make it happen. So I guess with that, I will take questions or however you want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dustin, for sharing that story. I love that it was born out of a love for your grandmother's recipes. I think that's might be a common thread for everyone, that the passion is born out of some ancestral story. And I love how you talked about the co-op and how you know, we talk about cocoa as more than chocolate in many of our webinars, and we have a part of our Bean to Bar workshop that we talk about cocoa as more than chocolate, and your journey has exemplified that you started with a idea about chocolate, and it's taken you down this path, an inner sort of an intertwining path of different things, with the end goal being how do you fund being able to make chocolate. And my biggest takeaway, I love what you said, bake it till you make it. That was great. But what I guess for me, my biggest takeaway was keep trying. If you have a passion or a dream for something, just keep trying, and you'll have, you know, you'll find some success. Okay, let me see the chat. I saw something pop up in the chat there. Okay, Thomas wants to know, what origins are you using and where are you getting your cacao from?
Okay, so I have two suppliers that I use now. One is still Chocolate Alchemy. Sometimes I'll get their nibs just to kind of sample some things, but I've went to whole beans now. And I try to be able to get the ones that are on the East Coast. It's a little bit more shipping friendly. So, and I also use Uncommon Cacao as another. I really like Ghana. So I go with Ghana a lot, but I got the Philippines and Haiti, Dominican Republic, and I just did a spur of the moment purchase last night with an Uganda. So yeah, but I've had others in like Tanzania, which is really neat. So I've had several different origins that I've worked with, but I kind of end up going back to Ghana. I like Ghana a lot.
Is there a certain nuance to the flavor of the Ghana beans that you like working with, or what is it about that keeps drawing you back?
One thing is, like, it's got that chocolate fudginess or something to it that is pretty familiar to me, and I feel like I can understand that more now where I'm at and how to complement other things with it. It's a bit easier to temper as well as some other, like I've had some trouble with my Haiti cacao. I've had some trouble tempering it. We try not to throw any emulsifiers or anything like that into our chocolate, so it can be a bit of a pain on some of the other ones. But I do like the taste of Ghana.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm just going to let the attendees know, if you would like to use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom platform, and you'd like to raise your hand, I will invite you to open your mic and allow you to talk directly to Dustin, if anybody would like to do that.
Also, I forgot to say that I have a small announcement later too.
Yes, and I'm sorry I didn't mention it at the beginning. There is a reason to hang around.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Very exciting announcement. You mentioned that because of where you live, you don't feel like you have a great opportunity to network. And so this seems like it might be a good platform if anyone would like to open their mic and maybe not ask a question, but share a common thread, you know, to Dustin's story or something that a takeaway from the story. Feel free to raise your hand and we'll open your mic.